All right, folks, welcome back to our listener Q&A on today's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. We've got Shannon Vasconcelos here who's answering those finance questions, and I'm answering questions about gun control and college admissions, apparently. But no, here we are.
We do it all over here.
We do it all. Send
in.
in whatever questions you've got. We can explore them pretty deeply. And I think Sally and Beth also have capital O opinions, just like I do.
They certainly do. Yes.
They certainly do. That's what it takes to be a host on the radio show here. But let's go into Patty's question here around financial aid offers. She's wondering, can we count on the same financial aid offer in future years, or do schools tend to lure us in with a generous offer and then reduce it later for different college years after you've confirmed your enrollment?
I will say that schools do not tend to lure folks in with a particularly generous offer with, the nefarious game plan all along that they'll cut that back in future years. But I will say that financial aid is not guaranteed for all 4 years of college. You do apply for financial aid 1 year at a time. Typically, if your financial circumstances stay about the same, you can expect your financial aid offer to stay about the same. Schools are not playing any real kind of bait and switch game. However, there are some reasons that your financial aid might decline in future years. Okay. And there's a few of them that I've seen most often from my experience. One is parent gets a new job, making a whole lot more money.
That's terrible. What bad news that is.
Right, exactly. Mixed blessing there.
Right.
Because financial aid, is based on your income reported on that financial aid application. It sometimes happens that a parent is out of work conveniently during that base year for the first year's financial aid, and they get a lot of financial aid. And then when they become reemployed, that changes things for future years. So you just need to be prepared for that. Another very, very unfortunately common reason that I've seen financial aid disappear in future years is if the student does not make the academic requirements to keep that financial aid. So that's something you certainly want to be looking at up front. What are the academic requirements for holding on to financial aid, for renewing financial aid from year to year? If we're talking about a merit scholarship, those typically have pretty high requirements to keep them. You might say, this scholarship is renewable for all 4 years of college, assuming you keep a 3.0 or a 3.5 grade point average. Sometimes you have to stay in a certain major, maintain a certain credit load. So you want to make sure you understand those requirements, that your child understands those requirements, and that they keep their academic focus throughout college. The goal is not to do well in high school so you can get into college and then you let the academics go. You got to keep them up in college. So the merit scholarships tend to have particularly high academic requirements, but even need-based financial aid has minimum academic requirements, tends to be, it might be 2.0, 2.7, and again, credit load requirements. So make sure that the student is focusing on their academics, because that can absolutely make financial aid disappear in future years. Another common occurrence is if the financial aid was based upon there being 2 students in the family in college. You've got 2 kids who are both in college at the same time. Yeah. And that fed into the financial aid formula as it currently does. And then the older child graduates, you can expect the younger child's financial aid to be reduced, because they are now assuming those resources that you had to split 2 ways, now they can all go to this one child in college. So those, I would say, would be the most common reasons I've seen financial aid disappear in future years. But barring those circumstances, if things stay about the same in your financial circumstances, you can generally expect financial aid to stay pretty much the same. Most schools will try and keep things in the same ballpark. If you do know already about a change that is coming, like your older child is graduating next year, you've gotten a new job and your income situation looks different, I would definitely advise speaking with the financial aid office at the school about what you can expect in the future. So you can be prepared. If things are going to change, you want to know how they're going to change. So you now have some time to prepare for that, make decisions based upon what you can actually anticipate for the future, rather than just, pretending it doesn't exist and hoping things don't change.
It's good advice. It's good advice to be
Yeah.
proactive in asking that question. It's not something that occurred to me before, but yeah, it makes sense to.
Yeah, it's tricky that you're signing up for a 4-year investment when you only know about 1 year's financial aid. It's not an ideal situation.
Agreed.
Next question for you, Ian. My child is a student at a top local high school in Virginia. Those folks in Virginia, I think maybe I won't say the name of the school to protect the student's privacy, but you'll have heard of it.
Yeah.
He came to school without some necessary foundational study skills and struggled his freshman year.
Okay.
His grades are mostly okay, with 2 core class exceptions. He's very excited about the opportunities he has at the school, and he wouldn't have at his base school, but is working exceptionally hard to keep up. We love the exposure to new ideas as well as the faculty and staff, but worry about burnout, and that we are limiting his choices for college later on as a possible computer science major. He's open to exploring colleges that are not as well known. Is he better off staying at his current high school where he is learning tremendously and has wonderful friends, or transferring back to his base school for future opportunities? Are there special considerations for GPA in the college application process coming from these very rigorous high schools when not applying to the same schools as the majority of the student body?
Yeah, there's a lot of great case studies and just questions in here, I think, that reflect active conversations that families have about where they should send their kids. It's a really interesting question too, to think about. Like, imagine this question is not about a high school, but about a college, right? My kid is at a top college, but is struggling because he didn't have the foundational skills that he needed. And should he stay at that college, let's say it's an Ivy, or transfer to a school with less of a name brand where he can be more successful, how will that help future career prospects? It's interesting because from a college perspective, almost nobody would ask that question.
Yeah.
Right. They would just be like, stay at the school that has more name brand. But I think there's an argument to be made in some cases for go to the place where you're going to be able to be more successful, because that's going to be more reflective of, your potential. Yeah. The interesting thing about this particular question is the definition of success, right? So potentially this kid could go to a different school and get better grades, but there are a couple of things that stood out in this question. I don't know if they stood out for you. He is very excited about the opportunities he has that he wouldn't have at his base school. Where's the other section that I love? Learning tremendously and has wonderful friends. So for me, I wonder about, so
he's struggling, but he's enjoying the struggle.
He's enjoying the struggle. And I wonder what learning tremendously means. Is it like he's got tons of homework and is the content is really challenging, or is it like, wow, I'm really learning a lot. I'm not getting great grades on these tests. At least they're not consistent with where I am, but it is really cool, the stuff that I'm exploring and the pace that I'm going at. Right. That's a tough one. I think that's what you've got to drill into. From my perspective, it's hard to get into a challenging CS school, period. It doesn't matter whether you're at a good school and at the top, whether you're at a mediocre school and at the top, whether you're at the good school and in the middle. So nothing about the future is certain. But I think that if you are having a great learning experience with people that you like and are enjoying the challenge, you should stay right where you are. With some lack of perfection across your grades, I think that's perfectly fine. The one thing I worry about is that question about burnout, but I think that the way that this parent phrases the question, it doesn't sound like burnout to me. It really sounds like the kid's being challenged. And the challenge of burnout, I think, is a push only to get A's and only to be perfect at the expense of the learning experience. I see that as creating more burnout as opposed to just working hard. Because working hard, I think, is a good thing and a good habit to set. And frankly, I think this kid might be in great shape at the start of college because they've had this experience and they know how to manage.
He went through those growing pains. A lot of students have this struggle when they get to the next level in college.
That's right. That's right. And if you've done it in high school, it makes college so much easier. And for me, it was college versus grad school. Grad school was so easy compared to college because college was so hard.
Yeah.
And so, it's all about when you have those experiences and how you respond to them. So it's a great question, but I'm inclined to say that the student should stay, given all the positives at the magnet school.
Totally agree. It sounds like, I like your framing of, we don't obviously see the whole picture, but the burnout may come for striving for the grades at the expense of the learning experience. If he's enjoying the challenging learning experience, just need to let go of the grades a little bit.
And there's some great little crumbs in here that make me feel optimistic about this student. I think that the idea that he's open to exploring colleges that are not as well known, these kinds of things are just kind of like indications to me that we're not saying he got to be in one of his classes. We're freaking out.
Right.
Does he need to go to another school? There are a lot of really competitive schools out there. And I think it is the age old question. Do I go to a place where my peers are really, really impressive and I'm kind of in the middle? Or do I go to a place where I'm at the top, but I don't really have a lot of peers that can challenge me? And I'm inclined to choose the former. That's why I work at College Coach, Shannon. It's because I want people who are way smarter than me who push me every day. So you know what I'm talking about.
I know. I'm pretty sure I'm the smartest one here, Ian. So
okay, that's what I was looking for.
I haven't had that experience.
Well, with that punctuation mark on today's show, I think we'll go ahead and end today's conversation. It was a lot of fun talking to Shannon and great having Ben Baum on the conversation as well. Next week, Beth is back hosting. We're going to be talking about special selective scholarships. We're going to talk about Moorhead Kane in North Carolina. We'll also talk about some other selective scholarships that are out there, which I think is a great topic for a lot of families. We'll also talk about some buy now, pay later programs for college with one of our college finance experts. That about does it for today. Shannon, you want to say goodbye?
Bye, folks. See you soon.
Perfect. That'll do. We'll see you all here next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.